Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive.
Yeah.
Today we're going to be tackling something that a lot of people, I think, feel but don't always talk about,
Right.
and that is mental health. And it's something that the more we avoid talking about it, the bigger it seems to get.
Right.
It's almost like there's this historical, you know, echo of misunderstanding that we're still kind of grappling with even today. But the good news is honest conversation, I think, can really chip away at that.
Absolutely. And it's sort of ironic that a topic that impacts everyone, whether directly or through someone, has been something that we've kind of swept under the rug for so long. And I think that that historical baggage you mentioned plays a big role in that, we used to view these struggles through a very different lens, one that often resulted in isolation and even mistreatment.
Yeah, okay, so let's dive into the why here.
Hmm.
What makes it so darn hard to talk about mental health? I mean, if I break my leg, everyone sees the cast, they get it. But when it comes to what's happening inside, it's a different story.
Absolutely. And that invisibility factor you highlighted is absolutely key. It's much harder to empathize with something that you can't see or immediately grasp. And the societal narrative has often framed mental health struggles as weaknesses, flaws in character rather than the health conditions they truly are.
Yeah, I'm curious for you listening. Have you ever felt like you were wearing a mask, pretending everything was fine, when it wasn't what made you hesitate to share what you were truly feeling?
Yeah, I think those moments of hesitation are incredibly common. We fear judgment, being labeled misunderstood, and the fear of not being taken seriously, of having our experiences minimized or dismissed is very real.
Yeah, I remember for me, there was a time when work deadlines were colliding with like a family emergency and it just felt like everything was imploding. But I kept telling everyone I'm good, just busy,
Yeah.
But inside I was this like tangled mess of anxiety and stress. And I finally broke down talking to a friend. And it was like this dam inside me just finally burst.
Yeah. And that feeling of release you described is so powerful. And it speaks to something we see happening more and more public figures, people we admire opening up about their own mental health journeys. Think of someone like Dwayne The Rock Johnson talking candidly about his bouts with depression.
I was just going to bring that up. Seeing someone so successful, so seemingly strong, admit to those struggles, it makes it so much more relatable and less taboo for the rest of us.
Absolutely. It chips away at that myth of invincibility. And what's more, there's a real scientific basis for why sharing helps beyond the social aspect of feeling less alone. Studies have shown that vocalizing our emotions, expressing those bottled up feelings, actually reduces their intensity.
So it's not just about feeling supported, it's about how that act of sharing actually rewires our brains to cope better. I hadn't thought about it that way.
It's almost like releasing a pressure valve, but how do we even begin those conversations? It's
Yeah.
one thing to acknowledge the importance of sharing, but putting it into practice can feel daunting, both for the person struggling and the one who wants to offer support.
Yeah.
How do we bridge that gap?
Yeah, it's like we need a mental health etiquette guide or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
Because even with the best intentions, it's easy to say the wrong thing or stumble through that initial conversation.
I think one of the sources we have actually offers a pretty solid starting point.
Okay.
It emphasizes approaching these conversations with honesty, vulnerability, and a willingness to listen without judgment.
So instead of jumping in with solutions or trying to fix things, maybe it's more about creating a safe space for someone to just be heard.
Exactly. One technique that therapists often use is called active listening. It involves reflecting back what you hear, validating the person's emotions, and asking clarifying questions to ensure you truly understand their experience.
I'm picturing this less like a problem-solving session and more like holding up a mirror, reflecting back that understanding and empathy.
That's a great way to put it. And for the person sharing their struggles, honesty and directness can be incredibly empowering. Instead of masking your feelings, saying something like, I've been feeling really down lately, can be a huge first step.
It's almost like giving yourself permission to not be okay, to acknowledge that you're human and going through something difficult. But knowing that these conversations are important is one thing. Taking actual steps to support our mental well-being is another.
Absolutely. We have to move beyond words and into action. And luckily, there are so many tools available to us. The sources you shared mentioned therapy, mindfulness, connecting with others, and self compassion. Let's unpack those a bit.
I have to admit, the idea of therapy used to make me feel, I don't know, like I wasn't sick enough to need it.
Yeah.
But the more I learn, the more I realize it's not about fixing some huge problem. It's about equipping yourself with tools to navigate life's inevitable ups and downs.
I think that's a misconception a lot of people have. Therapy isn't just for crises, it's for anyone seeking to understand themselves better, improve their coping mechanisms, and build a stronger emotional foundation.
Okay, so if therapy is like learning a new skill set, what about mindfulness? I hear this word everywhere, but I'm still not quite sure what it looks like in practice.
Mindfulness is all about bringing your attention to the present moment without judgment. It's like hitting the pause button on those racing thoughts and simply observing your breath, your body, your surroundings.
I've tried meditation apps before, but my mind always seems to wander. Is that normal?
Absolutely. It's a practice, not a perfect destination.
Hmm?
A helpful technique is to focus on your senses. Notice the feeling of your feet on the ground, the sounds around you, the taste in your mouth when your mind wanders gently. Bite it back to those sensations.
So it's like a mental gym, training ourselves to be more present and less reactive to our thoughts and emotions. But what about connecting with others? We've talked about the importance of conversations, but what are some other ways to foster those connections?
Spending quality time with loved ones, engaging in activities you enjoy volunteering, joining a club or group, these are all ways to build those social bonds that are so crucial for well-being.
It's about feeling seen, heard, and understood, like you're part of something larger than yourself.
Exactly. And that sense of belonging can be a powerful antidote to feelings of isolation and loneliness. And finally, let's talk about self-compassion. This one can be tricky, especially in a culture that often prizes self-criticism and striving for
Oh,
perfection.
I know that struggle all too well. It's like we have this inner critic constantly whispering doubts and judgments in our ear. So what does self-compassion actually look like?
It's about treating ourselves with the same kindness and understanding we would offer a friend who's struggling. It's about recognizing that we're all imperfect beings worthy of love and acceptance, even when we make mistakes.
So instead of beating ourselves up for a setback, we offer ourselves a gentle pep talk, acknowledging that everyone stumbles sometimes.
Precisely. Imagine a friend comes to you feeling discouraged about a failed project. You wouldn't berate them for their shortcomings, right? You'd offer words of encouragement and support. Self-compassion is about extending that same grace to ourselves.
This all ties back to the ripple effect we talked about earlier, doesn't it? Each conversation we have about mental health, each step we take towards self-care, each act of kindness we extend to ourselves and others.
Contributes to creating a more compassionate and understanding world. It's like planting seeds of empathy and awareness that can blossom into something truly transformative.
Yeah, it's really empowering to think that something so simple like choosing kindness can have such a big impact.
It really speaks to the interconnectedness of our well-being when we prioritize our own mental health. It creates that ripple effect you were talking about, inspiring those around us to do the same.
That brings us back to something you mentioned earlier about mental health being a journey, not a destination. Can you expand on that a bit?
Yeah, I think it's crucial to shift our perspective from viewing mental health as a fixed state to seeing it as an ongoing process of growth and self-discovery. There will be ups and downs, moments of clarity and periods of confusion, times when we feel strong and resilient, and times when we need to reach out for support.
So it's less about achieving some like perfect state of happiness and more about learning to navigate the full spectrum of human emotions with self-awareness and compassion.
Exactly. And embracing those imperfections, those moments of vulnerability, is actually where the real growth happens. It's in those cracks that we discover our resilience, our capacity for empathy, our ability to connect with others on a deeper level.
It's like we're all works in progress, right? Constantly evolving and learning and seeking help, whether it's through therapy support groups or confiding in a trusted friend. That's a sign of strength, not weakness.
Absolutely. It takes courage to acknowledge our struggles and reach out for support. It's a testament to our willingness to prioritize our well-being and grow as individuals.
Well, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with this. It's okay to not be okay. It's okay to have days when you feel overwhelmed, anxious, or just plain down. And it's more than okay to seek help when you need it.
And remember, even small acts of self-care can make a big difference, whether it's 5 minutes of mindful breathing, a walk in nature, or simply reaching out to a friend. Prioritize those moments that nourish your soul.
This has been such an insightful conversation, and I want to thank you for diving in with us today. And I also want to pose a question to you, our listeners. What resonated with you the most today? And what one small step will you take this week to prioritize your own well-being? Remember, every step, no matter how small, contributes to breaking the stigma and creating a world where mental health is openly discussed and compassionately supported. Thanks again for joining us.